Hey, hi guys. So in this session, we'll understand exception concept and exception handling ways and types of exception handling. So first, we'll understand real life in the real world exception. So I will take one example. Let's say you are going to the office, right? In the morning, you left for the office, but in between, your car get breakdown. So breaking a car down, that is an exception, right? And taking someone's help or taking a Ola or Uber car to reaching an office, that is called exception handling. This is how you are handling your exception. So in the same way, we are doing in the programming as well. So we'll understand what is the meaning of exception first. What is the meaning of word exception? So in the programming or in the dictionary, we can say it is an abnormal behavior, or you can say it is an abnormal condition, right? So abnormal behavior or abnormal condition, we can say it is an exception. And if you want to see the definition, then I have written here: an exception is an event that disturb, or you can say disrupt, the normal flow of the program. It is an object which is thrown at runtime. So this is called exception, which happens exceptionally, you can say. It doesn't happens in a day-to-day life, but it happens sometimes. So that is called exception. So what is the exception handling? So it is one of the powerful mechanism to handle the runtime error, or you can say to handle the runtime exception, so that the normal flow of the application, or you can say normal flow of the program, can be maintained. So in to handling exception, we have so many ways. There are total 5 ways to handle exception in Java programming. We have a try, catch, finally block, we have a throws, right? So with the help of those ways, we can handle exception. So we'll understand what is the difference between exception and error, and what is the superclass of exception and error. So superclass of exception, we have a throwable, and superclass of error, again we have a throwable. So interviewer mostly ask what is the superclass of exception, so then you can say throwable is a superclass, or you can say parent class of exception. But most of the interviewer ask what is the parent class of throwable class, then we can say object class is a superclass of all the classes which is available under Java. So object class is superclass. Object is a superclass of throwable class, and object class is a superclass of all the classes in Java. So now we'll understand the difference between both this exception and error. We'll understand the difference between exception and error. So I have written here point wise: exception can occur due to programmer. Programmer can make an mistake, right? So due to programmer, it can occur. This exception can occur. But error can be occur due to lack of system, or you can say virtual machine, right? But it is not occur because of programmer. Thus, programmer cannot do anything because it is not occurring due to the programmer. So programmer cannot fix. But in exception, since it is occurring due to the programmer can recover, can fix it. They can fix it because it is occurring due to the programmer. So programmer can fix it. So we can say it is recoverable. But error, since it is not occurring due to the programmer, so we cannot recover. We can say it is not recoverable, right? So error, how it happens, suppose that I am preparing this document, right? But I have not saved this document, this Word document, I have not saved it. So let's say my Windows get crashed or my system get breakdown, or we can say power went off and my laptop is not charged and automatically it gets shut down my laptop, and I haven't saved this file. Then what happened? Whatever the file we have worked so far, my time will get waste, and my whatever the document I have prepared, it will get waste. So you will have to, we cannot recover it. So once you will reopen the laptop, you won't be able to find out this file because you have not saved previously. So you will have to prepare again, right? So this is called error or system error, you can say. Now we can see the types of exception. So mainly there are two types of exception. One is checked exception, another one is unchecked exception. Error, we have a stack overflow error, virtual machine error, out of memory error. So these kind of error comes under error section, error class. So far we have seen the difference between exception and error, right? Most of the time interviewer asks what is the difference between exception and error. So you should be aware what is the exception and what is the error. Now I will show you one more diagram. So object is a superclass of throwable class, and this throwable is a parent class of exception and error. And this exception has two types. One is checked exception and another one is unchecked exception. So this IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception, these three exception comes under checked exception. It will be checked at the compile time. So whatever the exception will checked at the compile time, those kind of exception comes under checked exception. And this runtime exception, it is also called unchecked exception. So here we have a arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number format exception, index out of bound exception, right? So these kind of exception comes under unchecked exception. And this index out of bound exception, we have so many types. We can say array index out of bound exception, string index out of bound exception. So these kind of exception we will see while doing a programming. So today we will see only in theoretically, but in tomorrow's session I will cover the programming. So these checked and unchecked exception we will see in the programming as well. So I hope you understand this flow. Now we will understand the difference between checked and unchecked. So this is the difference between checked and unchecked. So I have written here point wise. So checked exception are the exception that are checked and handled at compile time. Exception which you can handle at the time of compilation, or you can say it can be checked at the time of compilation. This is called checked exception. So under checked exception, we have I explained you, we have a SQL exception, IO exception, we have a class not found exception. So these kind of exception comes under checked exception. And unchecked exception are the exception that are not checked at the compile time. Those exception comes, or you can say occur at the time of runtime, that is called unchecked exception. Like we have a arithmetic exception, array index out of bound exception. right? So those kind of exception comes at runtime. So whatever the exception occurring at runtime, that is called unchecked exception. Now we'll move into second point. The program gives a compilation error if a method throws a checked exception. So we will get an error, right? While writing a program, you have seen if you are making any mistake, then compiler shows an error. So what you do? You just fix it at the time of compilation. I will show you while doing a programming, then you will understand. So whatever the exception occurring at while writing a program, that is called compilation error. And this unchecked exception, the program compiles fine. At the time of compilation, you won't be able to see any single error because of the compiler is not able to check the exception. Because let's say we have some numbers, right? Let's say you are dividing any number by 0, right? So at the time of compilation, it will not give you any exception. It will not give you any error. But once you will run it, then it will show you arithmetic exception, right? So that unchecked exception means which is not checked at the compilation time. It will checked and it will thrown at the time of run. So that is called unchecked exception, or you can say the program compiles fine because the compiler is not able to check. So if your program is not able to check by compiler, then we can say it is unchecked exception. Third, IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception. These kind of exception comes under checked exception. And arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception, string index out of bound exception, these kind of exception comes under unchecked exception. So we will see these point while doing a program. I will explain you these points once again in the next session while doing a program. Then it will be more clear to you. So how we can handle? There are 5 ways to handle the exception. We have a try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. So we will see in the next session these 5 ways through programming. I hope you understand. Thank you.